I hope. Welcome back to the finals of Standard Super League. Hopefully we've cleared up our audio and video problems. Luis and I were just talking about the way the decks line up here. Both players managed to squeeze Siege Rhino into the rotation. Both players also have a red-green deck in the B slot, just like last week, and also just like last week, it's actually Dragons versus Devotion again.
Yeah, and it's funny that we ended up with a red-green mirror both times, and both times it's the same one. Which, if we look, that did not work out well for Tom Ross last time. It was a close match, but closer than I think it would be if you ran the match 10 more times. I think in general the red-green devotion deck is reasonably far ahead, and Raptors got the exact same matchup that he had last week in the same spot.
Yeah, are you surprised that Owen would do that? Would put the same red green dragons deck into B slot that Tom did?
It's kind of funny that, I mean, again, it's a shell game, right? You're trying to figure out exactly where all the decks line up, because there's two things you have to guess. One is you want a reasonable approximation of what are my opponent's three decks, and then once they have that, they could put it in any order. There's no rhyme or reason as to which order they go in. There's no specific reason that you would put Devotion in the middle. There's no game advantage to doing that. So it just turns out Owen hit the 1 out of 3 that he ends up playing against that deck. And maybe you're slightly less likely to put it in the same order, so maybe Owen's counting on that. But I would say it's still pretty close either way where it's going to end up. So it just ended up working out not quite in Owen's favor. Not like the matchup's unwinnable, it's just not good.
Yeah, and Josh actually changed 2 of his 3 decks. The only deck Josh is running back again is the red-green devotion deck. This week, he's leading off with Jeskai and finishing off with Obzon Aggro. So just kind of a fairly significant shuffling from Josh, who last week showed up with a bunch of Dragons decks. He played Esper Dragons and Marty Dragons.
Yeah, actually wouldn't call it Jeskai, since, as Josh noted, it's Jeskai, with an emphasis on the SKY at the end, because he intentionally has no creatures that do not have flying except Frostwalker. If we can take a look at Josh's deck list here, he's got, various Phoenixes, Stratus Dancer, Mantis Rider, no Goblin Rabblemaster, no Seeker of the Way. He's got one ground creature, again, Frostwalker, which has 4 power for 2 mana. But other than that, all he's got is cards that fly. He's ready to play against a deck like a Devotion deck or even an Obzon deck that has a lot of ground creatures.
Yeah, just Sky, SKY, I'll buy that. What do you think of this matchup, though? Just Sky versus the Obzon Megamorph deck that Owen's piloting first.
I think it's to Josh's advantage that he's not trying to attack on the ground, because it makes Deathmist Raptor and even Satyr Wayfinder a little weaker, though Wayfinder does match up really well against Frostwalker. So, in general, I think challenging Obzon on the ground, looking at Siege Rhino, Courser, Deathmist Raptor, all these cards you don't want to run into, is good for Josh. And he's able to go over a lot of Owen's forces. That being said, if the Obzon deck gets a hand that, if Owen can cast a Murderous Cut pretty easily in the first couple turns, I think that Owen's usually in pretty good shape. He's got good amount of removal, and Siege Rhino is always a card that Jeskai did not like playing against.
I've certainly seen Owen do a lot of winning with a lot of Obzon decks so far this season. I mean, you sound like you've got Josh advantaged in the first matchup and advantaged in the second matchup.
No, I think I would agree that he's advantaged in the second matchup. I don't think that's particularly close. Like, I think Josh isn't like super far ahead, but he is ahead. In the first matchup, I think Josh is better positioned than most Jeskai decks against Owen and his Obzon deck. But in general, the Jeskai decks, I think, aren't great against Obzon. So I think that Josh's card choices have given him a better shot. I wouldn't call him hugely advantaged or necessarily even advantaged at all.
I'll buy that. Third matchup, Josh is on Obzon Aggro, so he also did choose to bring Siege Rhinos to the table. Owen, meanwhile, and I wasn't really expecting this deck out of Owen for some reason, he's on Heroic.
Yeah, Heroic is not a deck we've seen a lot of, and in fact, when it got played in the regular season, it didn't do well in general. So it's interesting. What it does do, and especially in Unified Standard, is it doesn't compete for any cards you want in other decks. Like, look at all these cards. Besides Seeker of the Wave, maybe Mana Confluence, these are not cards that other decks are clamoring for. So that is one of the strengths of the Heroic deck. And Owen's got a pretty standard looking straight blue-white. He's not running any Dramoka's Command here. He's just looking to go straight up, play Heroic Guy, play Ordeal of Thassa, Ordeal of Helia, just 4 of each with for God's willing and for Johnny's presence to protect them.
Okay, so heroic versus odds on aggro, we get kind of two beatdown decks just kind of running into each other as they try to charge across the field.
That is, they are both beatdown oriented. I would say that of the two decks, and here we're seeing Josh's Obs on aggro deck, the Obs on aggro deck is the one that is more likely to be controllers just because it has Ultimate Price, Obs on Charm, Thoughtseize, and Jamoka's Command. It can realistically kill all of Owen's creatures if it gets the right draw, whereas Owen does have to attack and does have to, just go for the heroic plan. It's a lot more single-minded. So I'd expect Josh, especially once he sideboards in Self-Inflicted Wound, which is a great card in this matchup, I'd expect Josh to be firmly in the control role.
All right, so the A decks will play, the B decks will play, the C decks will play. Then they get to choose freely. If we get to match 4 and 5, we get to find the head games of what does he think that I'm going to pick, so what do I pick because of that? All good times.
I'm going to go on record here before you even see a single match that if Owen goes to game 4, he's going to lead with Obzon.
Yeah.
There's just no deck that Obzon has a horrible matchup against, and even the Devotion deck that Josh is playing, I mean, Obzon can just Thoughtseize and Hero's Downfall and Obzon Charm its way out of it. So, whereas Owen's Red Green Dragons deck, for example, his B deck, it's got a not great matchup against Red Green Devotion. You kind of don't want to bring that.
I'll buy that. Yeah, it is best 3 out of 5. We can put the bracket up, just kind of give everybody the context. We are getting the players set up. We'll have gameplay for you momentarily. We don't know who the champion is yet, but it will be either Owen Turtenwald or it'll be Josh Utter-Leyton. Josh having defeated Tom 3-1 in last week's semifinal. You can look at the regular season standings while we're here and kind of see how everybody did. Was Brian Kibler, unfortunately, who finished 8th and will not be invited back for Standard Super League Season number 2. Still putting all the final details together. Haven't confirmed everyone else's participation in SSL Season 2, but we have announced that will be coming up in August. Once Magic Origins hits Magic Online, we will play some more Standard for you right after a couple weeks after the Pro Tour.
Yeah, and I think that's good timing. I don't think this group of players, all of whom are playing in the Pro Tour pretty much, they're not going to want to reveal their tech if you did the Super League kind of edging through the Pro Tour. So right. I think going a couple weeks after makes a lot of sense to me.
That is the plan. Yeah, we announced the plan for Super Leagues for basically the rest of the year last week. We can show you guys the Vintage Super League, which is coming up next. And there's no break. We are rolling straight into Vintage Super League. Next week, come back, same time, same place. Luis and I will be amongst those slinging the most powerful spells in the history of Magic. Kai asked to sit this season out. So we basically, turns out, we've got the 8 guys who played both Season 1 and Season 2. I'm looking forward to this. I figure you're okay with getting out there and slinging some Vintage?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I do have to note, Dave Williams played both Season 1 and Season 2. He ended up getting relegated at the end of Season 2. So
my apologies. Yeah, no, it was a shame to lose Dave. I hope we get him back involved at some point in the future. The tournament's going to be double elimination, so it'll basically play out over the course of 3 weeks, basically ending just in time for most of us to all go to the Pro Tour. Now, did I see on Twitter that you may actually get to put in an appearance at Vintage Champs this year?
It's true. Pat Cox, Wildest McCuddle on Twitter, he's getting married that weekend. And, well, we're going to go to the match. I'll continue in a second, though.
Yeah, we tell that story later. We are ready for match number 1. Josh Utter-Leyton has brought a Jeskai deck, mostly flyers, to the table. Owen Turtenwald has put an Obs on Megamorph deck together. So lined up the Unified Standard cards such that he could have the Coursers and the Thoughtseizes and the Hero's Downfalls and the Temple of Maladies all be in one greedy deck. Interested to see how this plays out.
Well, I like Josh's hand. Not only did Owen have to mulligan this game because his first game was one-lander, Josh is on the play and has turn 3 Phoenix, turn 4 Phoenix, which is pretty good in general.
Yeah, and I do like the way the flying creatures match up for him against Obzon. I mean, Obzon is so good at just kind of mucking up the ground. It was good at creating ground stalemates even before people started incorporating all these Death Mist Raptors and Den Protectors into their deck lists.
And the way I felt about Jeskai, basically ever since Pro Tour Cons, the first Pro Tour of the season, is that Jeskai is on the border of Tier 1 where it's good, but you're not playing quite as high a card quality as a lot of the other decks. Like, not as, for example, Obzon. Obzon gets to play all the best cards.
Mm-hmm.
But in exchange, it does have some things going for it. It does have some resilient threats, and it does definitely get draws that make the other decks, look like they're not equipped to deal with them. Josh is going to play a bunch of cards this game that Owen's hand just doesn't match up all that well against. Hero's Downfall matches up very poorly against either kind of Phoenix or even Stratus Dancer.
Yeah, there is the Flamewake Phoenix.
And so now Owen has to decide whether he wants to play Deathmist Raptor or Hero's Downfall this turn, or Scry with Temple. Giving up your whole turn 3 to Scry with Temple is kind of rough, so I would not expect Owen to do that.
Yeah, if he has to spend turn 4 scrying, he doesn't get to play Siege Rhino, but at least he can play a 3-mana spell.
And he can just hope his top cards untap White Source in order to just drop a Siege Rhino and get in there. Josh being unable to play Ash Cloud Phoenix is a little unfortunate for him, but he still gets to play a face-down Stratus Dancer, which I would imagine is the best play. He could Lightning Strike the Morph, which Owen is representing a Den Protector there. But Den Protector's not really a threat right now. You'd rather just get another Stratus Dancer into play.
Yeah, come Scryland for Owen. Phoenix to the top.
I would like to keep the Phoenix here. You're kind of on the burn plan. This is a hasty burn spell that's going to be really hard to deal with. The thing is, you're not missing anything, and you're not maybe even if you're not playing the Phoenix for a number of turns here, your hand is still just all good spells. You don't really need a land. What exactly are you looking for? What are you trying to hit if you put the Phoenix on the bottom? And
looked like Josh did put it on top. Owen did finally come up with a White Source, but it comes in and play Tap Source.
So I would expect Owen to just play a Sand Step Citadel this turn and potentially just Hero Downfall the Morph. If you expect it to be a Stratus Dancer, which is a good guess, you want to kill that now.
Stratus Dancer down. And here come more Phoenixes.
So now Owen does have the play of Siege Rhino, and Siege Rhino's, as usual, a great card. But when you're getting hit for 6 in the air, and you're not really putting that much pressure on your opponent, Siege Rhino loses a bit of its luster. So Owen seeing a Thoughtseize, which it plays all right with Murderous Cut, but life loss, when you're getting beaten down, you're going to go down to 8, but probably up to 11 after you play Siege Rhino. It does... I mean, Josh still has a lot of cards in hand and missed a land drop, so you're going to hit a spell with a Thoughtseize. I don't actually hate leaving Thoughtseize on top, though. I could definitely understand playing it face down, or putting it on the bottom, rather. I think that Owen's just looking for Siege Rhinos. That's going to be the card that he most needs to hit. It looks like he's just going to Obzon Charm the Phoenix instead and wait on the Siege Rhino. I kind of like taking Thoughtseize a little bit more if you do that line, though I do like playing that more than Siege Rhino, actually looking at it.
Ash Cloud Phoenix to play for Raptor.
Raptor can't be too unhappy about that exchange. He did lose a Phoenix, but he's getting to race 2 versus 2, and given that his hand is Crater's Claws, Lightning Strike, and another Phoenix, that's just fine for him. Now Raptor would not mind drawing a land. If he drew a land, he could play Flamewake, then leave up Lightning Strike plus Crater's Claws, and then work towards Dig, especially if it was a fetch land.
More chips away.
Owen may be on the Den Protector into Get Back Obzon Charm mode, though it does mean you take a solid hit this turn. Murderous Cut's not quite castable here, not in a way that lets you be very efficient. Owen really wanted to be able to cast like Murderous Cut plus Siege Rhino in the same turn.
It's going to settle for just the Siege Rhino?
Well,
wow. There's exactly the fetch land you wanted for Josh.
Yeah, that is good for Josh. It's not as good for Owen because Owen is now taking 8 in the air most likely this turn. Josh is not very close to dying to Siege Rhino. Like he gets attacked down to 5, then Rhino down to 2, but has a pretty high confidence that he'll be able to finish Owen off next turn with his Phoenixes. Also, given that Owen didn't flip up the morph and just cast Obzon Charm, I think you can assume the morph is not a Den Protector, because if it was a Den Protector, it would be hard to imagine Owen would not doing that play last turn.
Here come the Flyers. 8 power in the air. No blocks are possible. No removal spells are ready. I mean, kind of a scuffly draw for Owen, right? He was on the draw. He mulliganed. You know, he didn't have white mana for a while.
He was on the draw. He mulliganed. He couldn't play turn 4 Rhino. It is certainly not the best draw. And Josh being on the play and having Phoenix and a Stratus Dancer into Phoenix is kind of what Josh is looking for. That's how his deck is built.
Yeah, I was going to say, while it's a scuffly draw from Owen, at the same time, it wasn't that far. It wasn't that bad. And Josh just feels like he's destroyed him here.
Well, Josh had basically his optimal draw on the play, which I would expect to be good against Owen's mediocre draw. If not, Josh is in trouble in this matchup. If one of your better draws can't beat a mediocre draw when they mulligan and you're on the play, then things don't look good going forward. And so Owen is basically dead to burn spells at this point. Josh gets to Lightning Strike end of turn. Owen can kill the Ashcloud Phoenix when Josh attacks, but then just gets attacked to death by the Flame Wakes.
Yeah, I mean, Owen's played this where if Josh's hand is blank, he actually gets to attack possibly for the win next turn. Josh's hand, however, quite far from blank.
And if Owen had like another Siege Rhino this turn, he would still die to Lightning Strike. There aren't that, given this actual board position, there aren't that many lines that get Owen out of this.
Yeah.
He would have had to have, I guess if he drew Hero's Downfall or Obzon Charm, he could go Obzon Charm plus Murderous Cut, but then he would still die to Crater's Claws, so it's going to be tough. When deciding what exactly he can or cannot beat. He definitely has to get a Phoenix off the board or he just dies to the board. So it's just basically whether he wants to play Den Protector face up here. That's his decision. And you know what? It might actually be the case that a face up Den Protector is the thing. Or he's trying to go Courser hit a land and just take a gamble here. Which is actually very reasonable too. Either way, Owen's dead here, but you might as well go for the play that gives you a slightly higher chance of winning if things go well.
Yeah. There's the Lightning Strike. Owen now knows that he's dead.
Oh, he's actually
dead as soon as he missed the
dead
land.
To the board. Yeah, he needed to draw a land here.
To turn it because he couldn't murder. Yeah. Makes sense. I don't know that Owen did anything wrong, but Josh Utter-Leyton did a lot of things right.
Owen could have played the Deathmist Raptor face up. He was trying to bait a removal spell with it. I don't think that would have changed the course of the game. He would have dealt maybe 3 more damage, and Josh would have been at 2 instead.
It would have made a top deck Siege Rhino lethal at the end, I guess. But
presumably, though, if it was face up, Josh also may have done something to kill it in a prior turn. So
fair
who
enough.
knows?
Now, does sideboarding change much here?
Well, we're taking a look at Josh's list here. He does get to board in Roast, which is a good job of killing Siege Rhino. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, he does not want Wild Slash in his deck anymore, I wouldn't imagine. This seems like his deck is built so much to race that cards like Mastery of the Unseen aren't that great. I do like the End Hostilities in his deck. He's got End Hostilities plus Flamewake Phoenix and Ashcloud Phoenix. That's a pretty sweet little combo. Your Phoenixes just come back, as Phoenixes tend to do, and having Wraths in your deck helps. Though, having Wraths against a deck with Den Protector and Deathmist Raptor, again, I don't think you want such a reactive card. You'd rather have a proactive card, so... Besides that, maybe boarding in a Dig Through time if you expect the match to be more grinding. Also Disdainful Stroke. I do like Disdainful Stroke against the Obzon decks in general.
What about from Owen's side? Can we look at his list? See what he's got hiding in the sideboard?
Owen has Wingmate Rock. Wingmate Rock looks quite good in this matchup. It can block a bunch of Phoenixes, but other than that, Ultimate Price is okay. It can kill some things. Though Dryden-Sorrow also looks solid. From the creatures you saw, Dryden-Sorrow should be able to kill everything. Though you do have to expect there to be Mantis Riders rolling around.
Mm-hmm. What is Owen going to take out? Anything in particular?
I could see that Elspeth not being the best card just because it doesn't interact all that well with flyers and is pretty expensive, and you often expect Disdainful Stroke to come in. And Hostilities might not be as good as point removal also because of how resistant Josh's creatures are to it. In general, neither deck gets hugely different after board.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Well, let's go down and see how Game 2 does. Each match is a normal best 2 out of 3. So Josh Utter-Leyton up a game. He's 1 game win away from hanging the first W on our scoreboard there. That's what those dashes are for. The overall series, though, best 3 matches out of 5.
And Owen did board in Duress here. I guess against a deck with Disdainful Stroke, Dig Through Time, and Burn spells, he's expecting Duress to be decent.
Makes sense.
The question is, will you Duress on turn 1 or wait till turn 2? I would imagine you'd want to Duress. Well, you could also not even do it turn 2. None of the cards you're taking are early plays unless you really think Josh has Hordeling Outburst in his deck. But given that you saw cards like Ashcloud Phoenix and Flamewake Phoenix, I don't think Hordeling Outburst is all that likely.
And he's got plans for turn 3, so looks like turn 2 is his answer. And now what do you take? You just have to take Lightning Strike.
I would guess Lightning Strike.
I asked and then looked at the hand.
Yeah. Besides being the only legal option, it's also, it's pretty mediocre, actually. I think if you're Owen, you'd rather trade not having Duress in your hand or having a card instead of Duress and Josh keeping a Lightning Strike, just because Josh's hand is not all that spectacular, and Lightning Strike doesn't interact well with Owen's current cards. So Owen is choosing to take an extra pain off Llanowar Wastes in order to play the Courser here, just to get the extra shuffle off Windswept Heath. Normally you lead with sack lands to get pain-free lands as soon as you can, but Courser actually reverses that. And Josh not going to Lightning Strike end of turn. Just going to play a Mantis Rider at this point. He's missing double red. He cannot cast his Flamewake Phoenixes right now.
Owen's Courser revealing that Temple of Silence. It's going to draw that next turn. Does not get to play it for free. Josh gets to start chipping away with Mantis Rider.
And we're going to see Owen shuffle away Deathmist Raptor here because Owen needs white mana to play a white spell this turn. You might as well attack. If Josh blocks, you get to Obzon Charm or Courser. Josh, of course, is not going to block for that reason, at least is my guess. Obzon Charm gets you either way, but leaving your opponent with a 4/6 in play. I guess Josh could block, and if you Obzon Charm the Courser, you lose Mantis Rider, as you do anyway, and then you get to Jeskai Charm the Courser regardless. It doesn't matter how big it is, but I still don't really see an advantage in blocking there. And so
right. Owen does reshuffle, and now he gets to draw a land again.
It's interesting that Owen chose to use the Obzon Charm there instead of using Dramoka's command. Could have gone ++1 counter and fight and saved Obzon Charm for a potential Ashcloud Phoenix, but it looks like Owen is happy enough just trading that particular removal spell. Josh, of course, is just drawing all burn spells he can't cast. He's trying to think whether he wants to. Right now, it's on Josh to cast Jeskai Charm to put the Courser back on top during Owen's draw step. So Josh is doing this so Owen has to play it before playing his land. He knows Owen's not going to hit off of the Courser this turn because the top card is a Satyr Wayfinder, though it's possible he could have tried to wait on the Jeskai Charm and do it at a different time. Interesting. Owen chose to save the shuffle and just cast a Temple and essentially not scry.
No, I guess he wants the Courser.
Yeah. He could have also played a Windswept Heath if he had decided to.
Oh, sure. Just put it in play instead of the Scryland.
Yeah, he would. He doesn't end up taking more damage. I'm actually a little surprised to see Frostwalker in Josh's deck. It does not match up well against Wayfinder or Deathmist Raptor.
He didn't. Yeah, I mean, all he saw last game was the Deathmist, but that tells you there's Wayfinders in there.
Yeah. So here's the advantage that Owen has by saving Jamoka's command. If Josh goes for a burn spell, the command can use the somewhat lesser used mode of preventing damage. And you can, especially since you can target Frostwalker with all sorts of, like, put a +1 counter on it, for example, or just the fight part. Regardless of how you want to do it, Frostwalker does end up dying at the end of that. So, and
Josh.
it might really get Josh here because Josh is likely not going to play around Jamoka's command. And there aren't very many spells Owen can cast with the amount of mana he has up. I guess ultimate price. Basically, Josh has to decide whether he wants to go for the Crater's Claws with Ferocious, and this is going to lead to a lot of cards going to Josh's graveyard.
I mean, he can't do much else with his hand. He still doesn't have the double red.
Yeah, and here Owen gets to put a +1 counter on the Courser and then fight the Frostwalker.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to work out well.
Yeah, it's like 2.5 for 1.
So Owen's going to end up with a Deathmist Raptor and a 3/5 Courser in play, plus the ability to shuffle his library if he does not like his top card. I would say that puts him fairly far ahead. And he does like his top card.
Courser starts attacking.
Had Josh been able to cast Flame Wakes these last couple turns, things might have gone differently, but Owen is kind of crushing Josh at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Owen's been kind of flooded.
Yeah, his draw has not been insane by any stretch.
But Josh, yeah, struggling to operate without a second red mana.
And and Josh did scry a Mystic Monastery to the bottom with the blue-red land.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's a fine point.
That's what people are saying in chat. I didn't notice that, but that's what it looks like people are saying. Given that, I mean, that's a play that Josh may have regretted now. That doesn't mean it's wrong by any means, but, you know,
didn't work out.
That, yeah, Josh didn't want to get flooded with his opening hand, but it has not rewarded him this particular game. So Owen gets to shuffle, gets to play a land off the top, and gets to Abzan Charm away the Manta Rider if he wants. He doesn't even need to if he doesn't want to, but doing it now seems like it makes sense. Then flip the Raptor and smash Josh down to 7.
Half his life total. And none of his creatures die a lightning strike. Which he saw way back at the beginning with that duress. Wow.
And now
Looks
Josh...
like we're headed to game 3 here?
Yeah, Josh gets to play a face-up Stratus Dancer, block the Courser, then lightning strike the Courser. Oh, but yes, Josh isn't likely to win this game given what Owen has access to. No, I guess Owen hit land in a row.
Now he's officially thoroughly flooded.
Oh yeah, but his mana flood actually has beaten Josh's semi-mana screw. Josh has been able to cast most of his cards, so it's not full-on screw or anything. But
yeah, well, I mean, screw only wins that if you draw out of it. I don't feel like he counts as drawing out of it until he comes up with the second red.
Well, I guess Josh is actually buying an extra turn. He's just hoping Owen never plays anything that can get the Deathmist back. Oh, here's a roast. It's possible Owen loses this.
Wow. Yeah. Josh is at 4. He doesn't even die to a single Siege Rhino.
Owen gets to scry. Sees another land. So Owen's drawn 5 lands in a row here. That's pretty unlucky. If Josh draws a red source and can start attacking with Phoenix, then we kind of have a game going.
Oh, there we are. Protector. That's a pretty good draw.
Oh yeah, that I imagine will be good enough because now Owen gets to flip it to get back Deathmist Raptor. He can wait and get back Abzan Charm. He can get back a Courser now if he wants to play Courser. Basically, whatever he does is going to put him in pretty good shape.
Yeah, he drew 3 cards that turn. 3 spells.
Yeah. I would say that's likely Owen's best draw. I mean, maybe Siege Rhino isn't. Josh is going to Jeskai Charm the Morph, just assuming it's a Deathmist Raptor because he can't beat a Den Protector anyway.
It's interesting. Josh is one of those things. He's far enough behind that he gets to just assume that things are true and make plays that are terrible in the games that he's already lost, but makes sense if he's in the winnable scenarios.
Yeah, and I believe that's just what you're supposed to do. I think people often in this this is a kind of general rule, but people like, well, if I do that, then I get destroyed by the Wrath. If I play my fourth creature, it's like, well, you can't beat Wrath even if you don't. You might as well beat not Wrath. And here, Josh can't beat Den Protector. He might as well try and beat not Den Protector.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. People don't make that logical leap often enough, in my opinion. Yeah, Josh has seen enough. So Owen Turtenwald sends us to game 3 here in match number 1. Interesting little game.
Yeah, that was. It's funny. Had Josh been able to play the Phoenixes, he may have been able to win, but it turned out that was only because Owen drew a bunch of lands in the late game where, Owen's always a little land heavy, but that one stretch of turns where all he drew was lands would have made it a much closer game had Josh been hitting for 2 to 4 a turn.
Right.
As it turns out, Den Protector off the top squelched any thought of a comeback for Josh.
I want to go back and look at that scry. The guys in the chat said Josh pushed a Mystic Monastery. Maybe you wanted to check out on YouTube after the fact.
And so I can go through Josh's logic, at least from what I'm assuming here, is that when you look at your first card and you have already 4 lands, this deck doesn't really want a 5th all that soon. And he was just hoping to draw. Basically, if you leave that on top and then draw another land in the first 3 draws, it's very bad for you. So he'd much rather push it, and he needed, because he had Mantis Rider on 3, Josh had like 4 draw steps to draw a second red and be okay. So I think numbers-wise, he's probably better off putting it to the bottom than keeping it on top. So it is tough, though. I mean, obviously, had he kept it on top, maybe he would have a higher chance of winning as the game turned out. But I guess it is close what you want to do. So he had, yeah.
At some level, it comes down to how many turns until he's going to regret not having a second red. Okay, right. If that's 3 or 4 draw phases, then he's got a decent chance of drawing one in that stretch. That's certainly the calculation he's got to do as quickly as he can. Yeah.
And again, you'd much rather be stuck on 3 than stuck on 5 or 6. So I think that from that perspective, again, Josh had Lightning Strike, 2 Lightning Strikes and a Mantis Rider he could have cast with his current lands. So he would rather gamble on drawing all spells and drawing 1 land eventually.
It's like Owen's going to be mulliganing again. Also, looks like he did bring in his Drowns and his Wingmate.
Yeah.
But yeah, 7 spells, obviously not a keeper.
Josh deciding whether he wants to keep. I think Josh did keep. It's not the best hand, and this time if you see a Monastery, you probably keep it. You definitely do not keep a Mountain, though. You still have early interaction with Lightning Strike plus the double Valorous Stance, and Stratus Stance is not the worst. So Josh's hand is not exciting, though. Even though Owen Mulligan, I kind of like Owen's side of things more right now.
How would you like it if he had a Scry? New Mulligan
rule. I love the new Mulligan
rule. Tour. You like it?
I do. I think it's awesome. I remember Ben Stark and I having this discussion with various folks, just trying to convince them. And I've heard a lot of people propose it. I don't know who initially came up with it, but basically, if you mulligan at all, whether it's once, twice, 30 times, whatever, after you keep, you get to scry 1. And that just makes mulligans less bad, and mulligans are pretty bad. So yeah. I like that idea.
Josh still has no blue mana, but that Stratus Dancer can come into play face down. The new mulligan rule LSB and I are discussing will make its debut at Pro Tour Origins, and Wizards hasn't enforced it for any other formats yet. They're going to try it out at the Pro Tour and make sure that it works as well as they think it will.
So in this game so far, Owen pushed Raptor to the bottom, drew a land, scryed a land to the bottom, drew a land, and then cast Drown to kill Stratus Dancer. Now his double Absalom Charm we're going to trade for Josh's 2 Phoenixes. So if Josh draws a blue source, Josh is, I think, pretty far ahead given Owen's current crop of all lands. But, yeah, and he scryed another land. Wow, Owen?
Yep.
Is he playing 32 land Absalom?
Appears to be.
Oh, I thought Owen had double charm. Did he not keep a charm off Scry or something? I swear I could have saw him. Given that Owen didn't have a double charm, Josh is actually in really good shape here. Well, that's the card you want to draw. Siege Rhino is not bad. It does make it so Josh's Valorous stances are now live, and Josh is kind of handily winning this race right now. Wow, Owen scried Obstinate Charm to the bottom. He was, I guess, just looking for Siege Rhino? That is interesting. Drawing Dig Through Time was fairly bad for Josh. I will give him that.
Owen keeps drawing more lands. I'm going to count Wayfinder as a land, I guess. It's pretty close to a land. At least he got a scry land.
Looks like drawing half a land.
Doesn't have to draw the 2 that he spilled into the yard, I guess. And of course the scry land sees another land.
Verborg. Wow, this is kind of insane. So Josh declining to Lightning Strike, which makes sense. I think Josh is not only trying to kill Owen, with a combination of Phoenix plus Burn. Josh also doesn't want to kill Raptor and then have a second Raptor come down or a Den Protector come down. Though Den Protector is going to be tough too.
Wayfinder's going to chump the morph. Owen just doing his best to preserve his life total. Wayfinder is the top deck. Jeez.
The funny thing is, at this point too, Josh has 3 uncastable blue cards in his hand as well.
Indeed.
So now Josh is going to try to attack. If Josh draws a untapped blue source, I think he pretty clearly wins. If he doesn't and Owen draws Siege Rhino, I think it could be a real thing.
Yeah, I think Owen's doing a pretty good job of maximizing his outs in this scenario. He's played so that if his deck finally does deliver up spells, he's kind of in this race. But it's Josh's deck who delivers up what Josh needs. There's the Shivan Reef. And
so now Josh has lethal in play. Assuming Owen doesn't have a removal spell, of course, we see that he does not. Josh could also leave up. It looks like he's deciding, clicking on Manus Rider. He could play Manus Rider, or he could just leave up Jeskai Charm plus Lightning Strike.
Yeah, here's Mantis Rider.
And Owen is actually dead here. Yeah. Josh can't count on his hand being 2 lands, but turns out if Owen's going to draw like this, it's going to be tough to win games.
Wow. 10 lands, despite scrying a bunch to the bottom.
Well, he did scry Drown and Obs Turn to the bottom. So Owen was being selective when it comes to spells. Obviously, he still got incredibly flooded, but he did make some choices here where it's not like he saw 15 land in a row. He did see a lot of land, though.
All fair, but all adds up to Josh Utter-Leyton in position to win this first match.
Yeah. If Josh puts Lightning Strike on the stack, he wins the game. Josh can also just wait and assume Owen's going to flip Den Protector to get back a removal spell, and then just Lightning Strike at that point.
Josh just going to go for the Lightning Strike end step, and it's going to work. Josh Utter-Leyton wins the first match, 1-0. Jess Sky takes to the skies, flies over all the lands. Not really the obs creatures we thought he was going to be flying over, more like a giant assortment of lands.
Yeah. So going back to the Mulligan rule, I think it's a substantial improvement. I don't know if you saw, but on MTG Goldfish they analyzed 85,000 games of Standard, and the person who molded to 6 or less was winning a lot lower percentage of games than I think you would want. It's something like 38% of the games.
Oh wow!
Which that's a pretty big drop. It means because player draw were actually pretty close. Normally, there was like a couple % difference between being on the play or being on the draw. But play or draw, when you mulliganed, you're losing like over 10% right there. I think using a Scry 1 helps bridge that gap a little bit, but it doesn't make mulliganing too good or overpowered by any means. I think it just makes it so you get to play more actual games.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge for R&D in trying to come up with a mulligan rule like that. They don't want to incentivize more mulligans. Like, the worst thing they can do is come up with a rule that makes a mulligan to 6 so pain-free that people are just gambling with their mana bases, and suddenly people are taking twice as many mulligans because they're cheating on lands in their decks. So you've got this fine line where the mulligan should be bad, but you want it to be less painful. And so I think they've clearly made it incrementally less painful. How much have they closed the gap? We'll find out, but I'm with you. I think it's just a clear improvement.
And I like it. I think that there's people saying like Delver of Secrets is too good. I don't think that changes much at all. Basically, for Delver to matter, first of all, you can't have a fetch land. Second of all, your top card has to be a non-spell that you scry to the bottom and then see a spell. Because if a spell was on top, it didn't matter whether you scried. You would have kept that anyway. And how often do you have Delver in your opening hand and you don't play it turn 1? It's not like now you get to play it turn 1 because of this. Like, you would have just played it anyway and seen what happened. So what is interesting is it makes being on the draw a little bit better. And there's 2 reasons. One, scry lands are better on the draw now. Because if you're on the play and you scry and you want to keep it because you mulliganed, your turn 1 scry land is now not as valuable. Also, if you're on the play and you scry and you have a fetch land on turn 1, it's not as good. Whereas being on the draw, it works in both scenarios, which I think is great. I think being on the play has always been slightly ahead of being on the draw. This, again, puts a little bit more power in the places where you want it, which is you want as many games of Magic to be 50-50 play draw. Obviously, if you mulligan, I expect you to lose %, and that shouldn't change. But, bridging the gap, making it so you're losing, let's say, 8% instead of 12% sounds pretty good.
Makes sense to me. All right, we're going to take a super quick break. We will be right back momentarily with match number 2.